Hi everyone, my name's Imogen. Welcome to today's session on addiction studies. It's lovely to see you all here today. Just before I get started, I just want to mention that we do have a Q&A available at the end of the session today. So if you already have some questions in mind, feel free to start popping them into the Q&A box now, and then we'll answer them all at the end of today's webinar. So feel free to start using that now. As I said, welcome to today's webinar. Today we'll be talking about our course in addiction studies. Just before we get started, I think it's important to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional land owners across which we are meeting today and from where you're joining us online. Here at the University of Tasmania, that's often the Palawa people. Respecting Indigenous knowledge and perspectives is something that the university is committed to and something that you're going to see throughout your time studying with us. So today in our webinar, we're going to cover quite a few topics. We'll be talking about why study addiction studies, talking about your course options, what study with us will look like. We're going to go through partner scholarships and how to apply. And then, as mentioned, we're also going to cover any questions that you have. So feel free to start popping those in now. So today you'll see that I'm joined by two of our lovely colleagues, Julia Hunt, who will be helping to answer questions at the end of the presentation. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Dinat, who is the course coordinator for the graduate diploma, to take us through the rest of our presentation. Thank you, Dinat.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Great to see you all here. So I coordinate the graduate diploma, but I'm also the course coordinator for the graduate certificate in addiction studies. I don't have a background in addiction studies, so my role is really looking after the whole course and constantly thinking about improvements we can make, and liaising with the staff who do have the expertise in the subjects and who teach the unit. We are going to be joined next year by a stream lead who hasn't commenced with us yet, but I'd like to just give Julia a chance to have a chat to you. So Julia has been teaching in the graduate certificate in addiction studies this year, much to my delight. So I thought it just might be nice to hear from somebody who does teach in the course, to give you a feel for who it is that might be teaching you.
Hi everyone and welcome. It's really great to be able to tell you about this course that we run. I've taught 2 units this year as a lecturer, so psychological therapies and mental health care, and a first semester subject, which is assessment and management of addictive disorders. My background is as a mental health nurse, but working in general medical settings as a consultation liaison or support to alcohol and drug services. So a lot of my experience and also working in ED and community is working with addictive disorders, the interplay between, or the intersect, I guess, between mental health and addiction and substance use. So I have really passionate about these subjects in this stream, and hopefully my clinical background really enhances the way that I teach and respond to students who are working in the field as well.
Thanks, Julia. Okay, so why would you study addiction studies? And I guess more importantly, well, for us, why would you study addiction studies at the University of Tasmania? And I think, and it's a nice segue from hearing from Julia, is that the content is taught by industry experts. And so whether it's the people who are coordinating the units, the stream lead, who will coordinate most of the units, or staff who are marking or tutoring in the unit, they all come from a really strong clinical background in primarily drug and alcohol work, and so they have the academic expertise, but also bring that really strong clinical knowledge. And we see that as really important for a course like this, so that it can stay contemporary and you can have a really authentic learning experience. You are studying online. That sometimes can be a bit of an isolating experience. So we really try and build networks. And so you have the opportunity to be connecting with people from across Australia, because our students come from across Australia. And so it provides a really quite unique opportunity to be sharing experiences. And we do find that students share, approaches that they take. And so in addition to learning from the content, there is that learning that can occur from each other, and some really important networks that can be built in, what is a relatively small community of healthcare workers in a large country, I guess, if I can put it like that. One of the things that Imogen will be talking about at the end of the talk is the scholarships that we have available to support you in your study, which can make it quite a desirable approach, I guess. Okay, so just a little bit about the graduate certificate in addiction. So it's addiction studies for health professionals. We do have a lot of nurses who do this course, but we also have other health professionals. And it's a minimum of 1 year study up to a maximum of 3 years. It is fully online. We do it as a part-time course, so studying 2 units per semester, and so that you can do the entire graduate certificate in 1 year. One of the reasons for that part-time approach is because we do recognise that most of the people who are, actually all of the people who are going to be doing this graduate certificate are actually working in the area. And so you're balancing work and study, but also your lives as well. So we find that part-time approach enables people, and the flexibility of the online learning enables people to really manage that study load. You'll be studying 4 core units, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in the next slide. So what's required to be able to enter? You do need an undergraduate degree from an Australian higher education provider. That is, in nearly all cases, in a health-related discipline or in social work, psychology or social sciences. There can be an opportunity for people who are doing significant work in the particularly drug and alcohol space who don't come from one of those health backgrounds. So, for example, we have had someone from the police force who has done the course. That's managed on a case-by-case basis, but I'd really encourage you, if you think that you fit that, you would really like to be doing it, you are working in the area, but you don't neatly fit into that health-related discipline or social work, psychology or social sciences, please get in contact with me and talk to me about it. I'm really receptive to hearing from you. It is one of the reasons for the working within that sort of healthcare space is because we do try and ensure that our assessments are authentic. And so often, we're doing things like case studies, or you're being asked about things that you are doing in your practice. And so if you're not actually practicing, that makes that really difficult. And so we do want to set you up to succeed. So as I said, there's 4 12.5 credit point units in this graduate certificate. So that's the standard size for a graduate certificate unit. Those units cover really the gamut of addiction studies, with a strong emphasis on drug and alcohol. We've just had a review of our units, and we are constantly working on thinking about what are areas that we could strengthen, but also recognising that this is not a space that stands still. So, again, I'm not an expert in drug and alcohol by any means, but But I know that what you are dealing with in the front line, if I can put it like that, can change. And so while there is, certain substances that are common and, we'll always be teaching about being alert to some of the changes that are happening and staying abreast of those so that what you are studying is really relevant to your practice as you are doing it. And so we take that very seriously. We think that's very important. So the things, what we cover, we look at in context of addiction, learning about the needs of those who experience addiction, about treatment, withdrawal, toxicology, a bit, if I can put it from sort of the epidemiology approach, and social determinants of health, assessment and management of addictive disorders, thinking about assessment, legislative requirements, co-occurring disorders. So that's like a general overview of that, I guess. We do want to build on what we imagine is your existing knowledge of treatment. And so that is particularly looking at psychosocial interventions and pharmacological treatments. And pharmacology is an area that we will be increasing some of our content around, because we're recognising that that is a really important aspect of work in this area. So we do have pharmacology, and we will be increasing that content. And then we do have a unit that is titled Psychological, there we go, Therapies in Mental Health Care. And I think that's recognising that while addiction studies does not necessarily mean mental health, there is a lot of overlap is the word, it's not the word I'm thinking, but there can be commonalities. And so taking a more in-depth look at some of the psychological therapies that are used in mental health care, but ensuring that that has an applicability to addiction studies. So it's not just about mental health care, it is about the therapies we're using in mental health care and how successful or otherwise are they in that addiction study space. Is there anything you wanted to add to that, Julia?
Yeah, I guess with psychological therapies, we've really focused on how you may apply brief interventions or use these psychological therapies in brief interventions with the people you see. A lot of the assessment tasks and a lot of the content is really of how these theoretical models are applied in practice and how adaptable they are to multiple milieu. So it might be specific drug and alcohol settings or custodial settings, just the relevance, just adding, I guess, enhancing foundation knowledge and giving you some extra skills to bring into your practice.
Thank you. So how are you going to do your learning? The workload in each unit varies. You can expect around 10 hours per week, per unit per week, working on study and assessment. So it is a significant time commitment to really be successful. We think it's really important that even though you're studying online, you have the opportunity to interact and have that face-to-face online experience. So we do have webinars scheduled throughout the semester in each unit, and also drop-in sessions. And so webinars tend to be more formal teaching opportunities. Drop-in sessions are much more informal. That's where you can meet and ask questions. We kind of see it a bit like if you were on campus and you were dropping by a lecturer's office to say, oh, look, I had some questions about this assessment task. That's what we're trying to mimic with those drop-in sessions. There's a lot of self-directed learning. So the platform we use is Milo, My Learning Online. And so we provide the content through Milo. We have a strong emphasis on directing you towards key resources, which not only support your academic study, but which we also hope will be useful for you in your practice. Some of them you may be very familiar with, others may be newer to you, and we hope that, yes, you can bring that back to your practice setting to benefit yourself, but also the people you work with and care for. And we have discussion sites where students can interact with staff and each other. Assessments vary. We are, though, put in a strong emphasis on authentic assessment. So things like case studies, doing presentations, thinking about your practice area and assessments geared towards you being able to consider some of the theoretical information and some of the content in the context of your setting is what we're really aiming for. So if you are a registered nurse, you can articulate through the graduate certificate in addiction studies to a graduate diploma of nursing in addiction studies and then on to a master's of nursing, a clinical master's in addiction studies. And so you enrol in the graduate certificate in addiction studies, and if you then decide, actually, I'd like to continue with this, you go on to the graduate diploma. That's an additional 4 units, so 8 units in total, but you get advanced standing for the 4 units that you've done as the graduate certificate, and then the master's is an additional 50 credit points on top of that. You do need a GPA of 5 to be able to progress through to the master's. So that's just something to consider if that's the journey that you think you are on. So you do need to have that GPA. You can enrol directly into a graduate diploma of nursing addiction studies if you're a registered nurse, but you cannot enrol directly into the master's. You have to do the graduate diploma first. Why would you think about going on to study a graduate diploma in nursing? So I think when we look at the graduate certificate in addiction studies, you're doing 4 units that are the sole focus is on addiction studies and your practice setting. They're very clinically focused. Going through to the graduate diploma, that's where you are further developing that specialty focus, but you have a choice of elective units across areas like education, management, clinical leadership, research. And this gives you the opportunity to expand your career options. So you can use it as a way to have a taster to see. So if you are thinking that you might want to move into more of an education role in your practice setting, then you might want to do a unit or 2 that has an education focus to start developing those skills and knowledge, and also to get a feel for it. Is this me? Is this what I want to be doing? Also, we have units that help you to develop your own leadership style. So if you're in a leadership role, then it's really useful for that. It is the key step towards a Master of Clinical Nursing, but it is something we'd see as really important for people that are particularly sitting in those leadership roles within their practice setting and want to broaden their skills and their knowledge. I'll pass over to you, Imogen.
Perfect, thank you. So as we spoke about before, our health courses are covered by what's called a HEX Partner Scholarship if you work within the industry. And so hopefully you're sitting at home with a phone or a pen and paper in your hand, and you can quickly jot down that website that's on the second point down. That will take you through to a pricing listing where you can actually see, you can look up your workplace and you can see what discount you will get on your studies. Usually the discount can be anywhere from 50 to 60% off the costing of your study. So it's quite significant and definitely worth checking what you're eligible for. What's great about applying for this HEX scholarship is that it just becomes part of your actual application to apply for the course. There's no additional work that you need to do to actually add it, and I'll go through that in a moment. But just before we do, I think it's important to just talk about what the costs are. So for the graduate certificate, the cost before that scholarship is applied is $2,312, but you can imagine once you take a discount of 50 or 60% off that, the course becomes incredibly affordable. And of course, that also applies to the diploma and the master's course as well. So it's important to note that this HEX scholarship is something that we will assess you for. And in order to be able to do that, first you need to apply. When you're doing your application, all we need from you is your current workplace. You can provide us with a letter from your employer or your most current payslip in the attachments on your application as well. This is a good way of us just being able to look you up ourselves nice and quickly. If you don't have that information at hand, we will follow up with you also. So don't feel like that should stop you going through and doing the application process. You can do that first. When you're doing your application, we always encourage you as students going into postgraduate work not to include every single piece of study you've ever done. What we need is your most recent piece of study that you've done. That might be undergraduate work. It may be that you've done some postgraduate and that's your last piece. But just simply by providing us with the institution that you studied at, what you studied in the years, we can look up all of your transcripts. So don't worry about running around trying to find your testamas and uploading those. We can do all of that work for you. So the application process should really only take you about 5 to 10 minutes to actually do. It's very quick and simple. Once you've done that process and hopefully you've uploaded that letter from your employer or your payslip, you'll then get an offer from us that will include the amount of scholarship or discount on your fees. You can accept your place, and then when you go to enroll in your units, you'll notice after you've done your enrolment that the fee waiver will be added at this stage. And so that's how the HEX scholarship works. In terms of enrolling in your units, Dinat's just gone through the units that you would enroll into, so it should be nice and simple. But if you jot down that address at the bottom of the screen there, you'll also see that there's a team on that page that you can contact to support and help you through each one of the steps on the screen in front of you. I know sometimes when you're navigating a new system, it can be tricky. And so we're there to help you through each one of these steps to make sure it's nice and seamless for you. And of course, if you have any questions about attaching documents, such as that letter or payslip, we can help you to do that as well. Just to finish off this area, we always get asked about when is the last point in the year in which you can apply, because of course you want to have time to go away now and think about your options and think about what you want to do next year. So the absolute last point that you can apply for this course is the 21st of February. That is very late, and I must say that given that the course starts on the 24th, a few days later, and it can take sometimes a week to get an offer, I always recommend that you leave yourself at least a 4-week buffer. So although you can wait up until the 21st of February, if you get your application in by the end of January, not only will you have your offer in time, you can enroll as well, but you'll also have time to look at the content before the class actually starts. A lot of time, the content will be available the week before class starts. So you can go into this learning platform that Dinat mentioned before and actually have a play, figure out where your content is, have a look at where your discussion channels are, and really familiarize yourself with what you're going to be doing in the following weeks. So you know that when classes start, you're completely prepared. So that is your absolute last deadline point, but try and work 4 weeks before that. And you'll notice that we've also popped the semester 2 application deadline point as well, in case you just want to have a little bit longer to think about what you want to study. There's that semester 2 entry option as well. So you don't just have to start at the start of the year, you could start halfway through as well. Dinat or Julia, is there anything you wanted to add to that as people teaching into the course?
No, I just support the don't leave it till the last minute to enroll advice. I think that was really good advice. We do see it can be harder for students who are starting later. And, you know, particularly if there's delays in processing things, you're starting on the back foot a bit. And And it is much better, particularly if you haven't studied with us before, to have that opportunity to go in. You get your unit schedule, you can see when your assessment tasks are due, so you get that information 2 weeks prior to the start of the semester. And so that really helps you with planning your life and knowing, you know, when is not a good time to be thinking you can go away on holiday, for example. So yeah, I would just support that. And I'd just note the census date that was there as well. And I think what we sometimes see is students that'll roll in 2 units and think, yes, this will be fine. And then you're doing it for a few weeks and things change in your life, or you just think, actually, this is too much. So if you withdraw from a unit prior to the census date, there's no penalty, academic or financial, and you might like to just do 1 unit that semester, and you have that option. So yeah, strongly recommend. That's the other reason why getting in early and getting engaged with the study gives you a good feel for how manageable is this for me at this stage. And yeah, we really encourage students to be sure that they are wanting to be doing 2 units, because that option of dropping back to 1 is always there. I'm always really happy to talk to anyone if, you know, you want to make a decision about which unit is better to do this semester, and, you know, and withdraw. So if you want to have those conversations, really happy to have them with you. Or, you know, any conversations about the course, very happy for you to contact me in advance of enrolling, just to say, I'm thinking about it. What do you think? You know, can I ask you some questions? Really, really open to that. Imogen, I did see there was a question in the questions and answers, which I might just continue because I know that's where we'll be going next. There was a question about how do you know, might do presentations? Is it group work? How do you present to the class? So at this stage, there isn't group work in this course, but never say never. So there can be, but that's it's always done knowing that you are online. So for if you're doing oral presentations, there's different ways we might do that, but one of the ways is that you select to be in a small group of students and you present via Zoom to the other students. You get feedback from them, you provide feedback on their presentations, and you have an academic who's in there assessing your presentation. So that's one example. I hope that answers your question. But yeah, so everything is done appreciating that this is a fully online course. So you could be doing a presentation and you're in Western Australia, and 2 of the other people are in Queensland, and a couple in Victoria and 1 in Tasmania. And you're all presenting to each other over an hour or 2. So that's just one example of how we might do it.
Just as an extension to that, Dinah, I know a lot of the time the question gets asked, is this a course that has exams? I think sometimes when we've had students come from especially a medical degree background or a health background, they're used to assessments being in the form of an exam. So do you just want to talk through how, obviously we've talked about group work, but that assessments are not in the form of exam in this course?
Yeah, no, they're not. We are. There's a number of factors that are really forcing us, but also it's great to be in this state of change, that are really requiring us to look at how we assess. So there's been a lot of advances in artificial intelligence, and that's really changing some of the ways we're approaching assessment. So we're looking at actually how we incorporate artificial intelligence into assessments, rather than just thinking about it as something that is perhaps threatening the way we do assessments. So that's one massively changing space. The other things we're looking at, though, is, so, you know, we do talk about authentic assessment, and what we're really aiming is that the assessment is a really important part of the learning in the unit, and that it also benefits you. So one of the directions that we are moving towards and have implemented in other specialties is portfolios, because portfolios are ways that you can build up a body of knowledge of work, and that you're able to use that then in your practice setting. So that's another example. And also thinking about assessments across a whole course. Programmatic assessment is something that is also being strongly looked at in the university space. So it's a really exciting space that we're in at the moment. And really the emphasis is on assessment tasks. So a lot less about writing essays and a lot more about what is my practice setting? What am I doing in my practice? How can I be doing assessments that better prepare me for my practice setting? I think that's probably the best way to summarise it. Does that answer it, Imogen?
Yeah, I think so. And I can see a question from someone about their availability throughout the year. And I think if we circle back, Diana, to when you were talking about sort of what load should you take on throughout the year and, that the importance of the census date, I think it's important to talk to students about the fact that when you're juggling your load and deciding how much you should enroll into, if you're feeling overwhelmed or if you're unavailable for a portion of the year, rather than fully withdrawing from the course, the better option is actually just not to enroll for that semester, and then to pick up your study load for the following semester. A lot of students we find sometimes will withdraw from the whole course altogether, and then they'll have to reapply for it. And when you reapply, it may be that the partner scholarship in which you've been awarded initially has since changed, as they can change annually. So if you simply don't enroll for one semester, you are still guaranteed that partner scholarship throughout that semester, and it continues through into your next enrolment. So whether it's 1 unit, 2 units, or you're just having a break because you need it, or you're just unavailable, it's really important to talk to your course coordinator first before making those decisions, just to make sure that it's the most beneficial decision for you. And given the question, it's important to also note that semesters don't run back to back. There's a nice break in between them, and there's a break either side of them as well. And so although we don't have the dates up at the moment, you've got, and I'm going to surmise this, you might need to correct me, the second half of June and the first half of July, I believe, is a break. And then it might even be longer than that. And then we go into semester 2. So if you're going to be away for just a small part of a semester, it could be, Dinah, that they come and speak to you or someone that's teaching their unit, and that they can actually catch up rather than not do the unit altogether and have to wait a semester.
Yeah, Imogen, could you just go back to the slide with the dates on it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I'm interpreting that question also as being, I'm not available, but I can, could start mid-August. So the only thing I would flag as a bit problematic about that is if you're coming into a unit in mid-August, you're going to be coming in either week 3 or week 4. And that's a lot to catch up, but more problematic is the fact that we often have the first assessment task due around week 4. And that assessment task is generally a lower weighted assessment task, but it is a way of encouraging students to engage with the content. And so often if you're coming in mid-August, you might be coming in very close to when an assessment task is due, and there would have been a requirement for you to work through content to be able to address that assessment task. So that's not something that I would recommend. Occasionally, we do have students who, sometimes have got something that's happening. They're getting married, for example, mid-semester. And so if you can, juggle that with your assessment tasks and working through the content, the beauty of online learning and the flexibility of it is that it is self-directed, but just be aware of when assessments are due. we do appreciate that people have busy lives. And so, you know, if you're having difficulty meeting an assessment due date, we always encourage students to contact the unit coordinator and ask about an extension. We are very understanding about balancing work and study, so it's well worth doing. But yeah, I would think starting a few weeks into the semester really does put you on the back foot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could see a couple more questions about how the enrolment works. So just to reiterate again, you can absolutely enroll in semester 1 and do 1 unit or 2 units, and then simply not enroll in units in semester 2 if you're unavailable, and then pick those units back up the following semester, or you can do 1 unit per semester. You can choose, once you've accepted your offer and you're ready to enroll, it's really up to you how you choose to work your load. And that's something that you can do in conversation with us or one of your course coordinators. So if you're unavailable for a period of time, you can absolutely apply, accept your offer, and enroll in the semester in which you are available. And that could be that you apply now and accept your offer, and you may not be ready to actually enroll until semester 2, but you can do that now and then just wait until semester 2 rolls around. So you can even apply for semester 2 if you know you're just not going to be available for semester 1. So when you go into the application system, it will ask you which semester you're going to apply for. So I hope that that answers that question. And then the course is Commonwealth supported. So that's another question that we were asked. And the scholarships apply to the Commonwealth supported fee price structure as well. And in terms of the scholarships are not just for people who are employed in a nursing capacity. If you go to that website, which I will bring back up for everybody, just so you can jot it back down. Here it is. You'll find that there's lots of different employees on there from a range of different health backgrounds, not necessarily just for people that are working in a nursing capacity. So I do encourage you to jump onto that website and just look up your workplace. Almost all of them are covered across each state to let you know whether they have a discount and how much that discount is. So I do strongly encourage you to note that down and go and do some research.
The only one that would be only nursing is the graduate diploma, and that's because it's a graduate diploma in nursing.
Yes. Ladies, is it worth just covering if a student has done one of our graduate certificates in another health area, does that give them credit to go straight into the diploma similar to how being a nurse does, or can they not get credit and they do need to start still at that graduate certificate level?
So I think it's worth talking about credit. So in credit, we mean recognition of prior learning. And so one of the things that we do try and recognise is if you have done study in another area. So one of the ones that, it's course coordinators it's me who looks at the credit applications. One of the ones that I do see in relation to the graduate certificate in addiction studies is people who have done previous postgraduate study, particularly in mental health nursing. And so what we find is, so we wouldn't be able to give credit for the whole graduate certificate in addiction studies because addiction studies is not mental health. But often you can get credit for a unit, particularly psychological therapies in mental health is a common one. If you have studied a similar unit in mental health, in a mental health setting. So what we look at is what were the learning outcomes and the description and the assessment task for the unit that you have done, and how well does that match to, can we say that you have met the learning outcomes for our unit? And so that's what we use. There is a limit to how much recognition of prior learning we can give. but it's quite generous. So I guess to answer your question, Imogen, no, a graduate certificate doesn't mean you can just go straight into a graduate diploma, because the graduate diploma is in addiction studies. And so we need to ensure that you actually have that knowledge in addiction studies. But it's always worth, if you have done some study elsewhere, and particularly when you're looking at the graduate diploma. So, for example, there is a evidence-informed practice unit in the graduate diploma. You may have studied a similar unit in another course. So that's also one that, commonly you can get credit. So there is a site on the website, which is for recognition of prior learning, and the applications aren't onerous. And I'd really recommend that if you have done previous study and you think it might be eligible, then to put that through. You don't get recognition for undergraduate study for a postgraduate degree, though. So it has to be postgraduate study.
And the last thing I think it would be good to talk about with students is how they juggle postgraduate study with their day-to-day lives, and also just recognizing that a lot of the students that might be joining us today perhaps have only done their undergraduate studies, and this will be the first experience they have doing postgraduate study, and how postgraduate study differs from undergraduate study, because there is a little bit of a shift in the way that you learn and the learning outcomes. Did you, one of you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk to that. Yes, there is a difference. And I think our postgraduate students come from a really wide range. So we can have people enrolling in the graduate certificate in addiction studies who are commencing their work in that area, or who have significant experience in that area. So from a clinical point of view, coming from different levels of knowledge and skill, that's one of the things that we love about the peer learning that can occur. But also we can have people doing a graduate certificate in addiction studies who have had significant postgraduate study in the past, even maybe to the master's level in another area, and people who are doing it as their first postgraduate study. So the first thing I'd say is that we really want you to succeed. So if you are having difficulties, speak up, and speak up early. Your unit coordinator is your first port of call. They really want to support you, and they want you to do well. And I can personally vouch for the unit coordinators in the graduate certificate in addiction studies. I'm looking at Julia. But they are genuinely people who are passionate about this area and passionate about supporting students. So that's your first port of call, but also just flagging that the university has significant supports available for students. And so, there's an entire student support area which covers everything from wellbeing, counselling services through to student advisors, learning advisors, tools that you can use if you need assistance with writing. So one of the reasons that we want you to speak up if you are finding it difficult, it might be that you're not used to self-directed learning. You're used to somebody saying, turn up now and have done this. And one of the times students can run into difficulty is if they are very busy and weeks go by and then they realise I haven't been engaging with the content. So yes, just speak up, but pacing yourself through the course is the best advice I can give. Just a bit each week and keeping up, taking note of when assessment tasks are due, and thinking about what content do I need to have covered to really be successful with that assessment task. But also knowing that there really are excellent supports available to support you. It's up to you to either access those supports or to reach out and say, can you point me in the direction, or can you assist? And you'll find that everybody really does want you to succeed. I'm going to be slightly cheesy and say that Tasmanians are known for being friendly, and I like to think that that is something that comes through at the University of Tasmania. We do like to support our students.
I think too, it's also thinking about being creative with how you study, because this is going from a structure where it is self-directed. That actually means that it gives you the flexibility to really choose when you want to study and when it fits for your life. It could be that of an evening when you're cooking dinner for your family, that might be your relaxing time, that you have your phone up and you're listening to a lecture and you're jotting down notes as you're also doing other bits and pieces. It might be that you go for an evening walk, and that's an hour or a half an hour time slot where you could be listening to something, or you could be reading as you walk. And so think about those moments in your life, or those small pockets in your life that you could fit some of these bits into, that aren't necessarily just designated big blocks to sit down and study, because that can be nice and easy ways to chip through your study, rather than feeling like you've got the pressure to really dedicate massive blocks of time. The units are set up for you to work through at your own pace and click through week to week. And so for that reason, you can find small pockets of an hour or 2 hours here and there to really go through little bits of it and take it slowly. And then there's always essential readings, and then there's supplementary readings as well, Dinah. So I'm assuming students can read an excessive amount that gives them absolutely everything and then some more. And then there's also just some essential readings which will give them the foundational building blocks to go to the next week. So students can also decide how much time they have to be able to dedicate.
I was just going to add that, yes, there is essential reading, but you can be a bit flexible about how you engage, or your method of learning, as long as, I guess, you address key tasks and key content. All unit coordinators have actually been in those shoes as well. We've all juggled full-time work with postgraduate study, families, events that come up in life. I'd like to think that we're all really approachable in the way that we've handled those stresses. We all do it differently, our own tips and tricks. Or I've worked with lots of students on, just little ways that they may be able to manage their time or work through content. So, it's a shared experience that we're happy to pass on.
It's very true. And I think the other thing I'd say is that we also work hard to have content that is engaging. So gone are the days where studying online meant that you were faced with an extremely large amount of text that you had to read and a whole heap of readings that you had to read. If we are giving you a reading, if that reading is 10 pages long, that's because we either think you need to read that full 10 pages, or else we'll say to you, this is a 10-page reading. If you're short of time, these are the 2 pages that are absolutely essential for you to read. We're not setting you a textbook and saying, read this textbook from cover to cover, because, a quarter of it might be really relevant to your study. If we are directing you to a textbook, and increasingly it's less about textbooks and more about other resources. We're really clear about, what is the essential information you need. We will sometimes, though, then point you in the direction of, if you're particularly interested in this area, here's some additional things you could look at, because this might be something that's really important for you and very relevant to your workplace. But yeah, it's much more about engaging content. We work with educational designers to make our content engaging, and really directing you towards, this is important. Please learn about this.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, ladies and everyone, for your time. I know that we have just gone over time, just a smidge, but I can see that you've all hung around, so that means that the conversation must have been meaningful for you, and hopefully that you've gotten something extra out of the session today. We're always around to help, and we're always here and available, so just reach out if you have any further questions. We'll be sending the recording of this webinar out to you after today's session, so if there's any websites that you've missed, you'll be able to go back and look at those, or if there's anything we've said today that you feel like you need to just quickly revisit, you'll be able to rewatch it as well.
And I'll, in that email that they send out to you all, it'll have my details as course coordinator, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or you want to know more about the course. Always really happy to chat to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dinah, and thank you, Julia. I appreciate everybody's time.